I had been in that VA ward for 11 days before I learned her name. My name is Earl Denton. 40 years Army, 2 tours in places I still don't talk about at dinner, and a bad hip that finally caught up with me last February. I am not a man who goes looking for conversation. I keep my curtain mostly drawn. I eat what they bring me, and I watch. You learn a lot about a place just by watching. She came in every morning at 6. Navy blue scrubs, hair pulled back tight, badge clipped to the pocket. Claire Maddox, RN young, maybe late 20s, with a kind of face that looked older only when she concentrated. Quiet the way certain people are quiet, not shy, not beaten down. Settled. Like she'd already had the arguments the rest of the world was still getting around to. The ward ran better on her shift. I noticed that before I knew anything else about her. The other nurses were fine, competent enough, but there was a looseness to things when Claire wasn't there. A cart left in the wrong corridor, a call light left blinking too long, a medication run that ran 10 minutes late. When she was on, the place hummed. I watched her once recheck an IV drip that a different nurse had set up, catch a kink in the line nobody else had seen, and correct it without saying a word to anyone. Just fixed it and moved on. I filed that away. The trouble started on a Thursday. The East Wing had a handful of private pay patients mixed into the population. Men whose families could afford the upgraded rooms, the better mattresses, the view that didn't face the parking deck. One of them was named Hargrove. Gerald Hargrove, the way his family said it when they visited, 2 syllables, like a verdict. He'd come in for a cardiac workup, nothing serious, and he wore that fact like a credential. He had opinions about the ward. He shared them. I was awake at 6:40 when it happened. Claire was at the nurse's station doing her morning charting, and Hargrove had come down the hall in his robe, which he wasn't supposed to do, but nobody told Gerald Hargrove what he was supposed to do. He wanted his pain medication moved up by an hour. He'd been told twice already it wasn't scheduled that way. He said it the way you'd say it to someone who'd cut you off in traffic. Get me the attending. I want a real doctor, not the cart girl. The ward went quiet. 3 other nurses stopped moving. A young orderly near the supply closet turned slowly toward the wall, like he was trying to become part of it. Claire looked up from her chart. She didn't flush. She didn't flinch. She set down her pen and she said, with exactly the same tone she'd used to explain a dosing schedule, "You're attending rounds at 8, Mr. Hargrove. I'll let him know you'd like to speak with him first thing." Hargrove wasn't finished. He took a step closer, lowered his voice to something theatrical, the kind of quiet that's designed to carry. "I'm paying for a level of care that does not include waiting for the cart girl to feel like moving. Do you understand me? I want someone qualified." She held his gaze for one long beat. Then she turned back to her chart and picked up her pen. He stood there a moment, waiting for a reaction he wasn't going to get, then turned and walked back toward his room. The ward exhaled. One of the younger nurses shot Claire a look of sympathy, and Claire answered it with a small shake of her head. Not dismissive, just, let it go. I didn't let it go. I lay there staring at the ceiling for the next 2 hours, and I couldn't tell you exactly why it bothered me the way it did. I had seen 100 Hargroves, men who confused money with authority and authority with worth, but something about the way she'd absorbed it and gone back to work. It pulled at something I couldn't name yet. The answer came from the bed across from mine. His name was Ruiz, a Marine gunnery sergeant, 71 years old, bad knees, and a chest full of ribbons he never talked about. He'd been watching the whole scene from his bed the same way I had, and sometime around mid-morning, he asked the orderly to wheel him to the window. While the kid was positioning the chair, Ruiz looked over at me. "You see her wrist?" he said. "What?" "The nurse, when she was leaning over the chart." He was matter-of-fact about it, like he was describing a weather pattern. "Left wrist inside. There's a tattoo. I hadn't seen it. What kind?" He looked at me like the answer should be obvious. "An anchor, with a rope and a star. Navy Cross anchor." He paused. "Small. Faded some. But that's what it is." I didn't sane for a moment. The Navy Cross. Second only to the Medal of Honor. Not given lightly. Not given for paperwork. "You're sure?" I said. "Gunny Ruiz," he said, like that was the whole answer. Which for a Marine it was. I chewed on that all afternoon. A Navy Cross on a woman in her late 20s meant recent service. Recent enough that the ink was still dark at the edges. Recent enough that whatever she'd done, she hadn't done it 40 years ago in a place nobody remembered. She'd done it while the rest of us were still here. I asked the day aide, a young kid named Marcus who brought the afternoon trays, if he knew anything about her. He looked both ways down the hall like I'd asked him to reveal a state secret, then leaned in. "She doesn't talk about it," he said. "But I heard from one of the night nurses that she did 2 deployments. Corpsman, and that she was in some kind of action, an overrun, I think. A forward aid station. They say she got 7 men out. 7 men out of a burning aid station under fire. I thought about that for a long time. The next morning, Hargrove was back. Different complaint, same tone. He came down the hall while Claire was checking the vitals of a veteran named Torres who had been in that bed for 3 weeks and who I had watched Claire treat every single day with the same steady attention she gave every man on that ward. Hargrove wanted his pillow changed. He wanted it changed now. He looked at the back of Claire's head while she worked on Torres's blood pressure cuff and said loudly, "Somebody useful want to deal with this." That was the moment Ruiz moved. He didn't move fast, he was 71 and his knees were shot, but he moved with a deliberateness that stopped everyone in the ward cold. He gripped the rail of his bed, swung his legs over, and stood, straight, shoulders back. The posture that never quite leaves a man who spent 30 years in the Corps. "This nurse," Ruiz said, not loudly, but clearly, the way a man speaks when he wants every person in earshot to understand him, earned the Navy Cross. She held a burning aid station under direct enemy fire. She carried 7 of her Marines to safety. 7 men walked out of that valley because of her. He looked at Hargrove. "That's who you're speaking to." The ward was absolutely still. Torres, blood pressure cuff still on his arm, turned to look at Claire. In the bed by the door, a veteran named Howell, who had a bad back and never sat up voluntarily, sat up. In the corner, a man named Castillo, who'd lost most of the use of his left hand and raised his right instead, lifted it in a slow, deliberate salute. Ruiz's hand came up next, then Torres's, then Howell's. I was the last one standing. My hips screamed at me, and I stood anyway. Every man in that ward who could raise a hand did. The ones who couldn't sat up straight and turned toward her. Claire had gone still. For the first time in 11 days, I saw her composure crack, just barely, just for a breath. Not into tears, not into any kind of display, but into something small and human and real. She pressed her lips together. She straightened. Then she gave the ward a single nod, the way a person accepts something they've been carrying alone for a long time. Hargrove stood in the corridor with the color gone from his face, holding his pillow. He didn't say a word. He turned and walked back to his room, and we did not see him again that morning. Marcus, the day aide, was standing at the far end of the ward. He told me later he didn't know what to do with himself, so he stood there until his legs worked again. I know what I did. I sat back down, and I thought about the things I had filed away over 11 days. The IV drip she'd caught, the call light she'd answered, the way the ward ran on her shift. I thought about a burning aid station and 7 men who were alive because she'd refused to leave them. And I thought about the words she'd used to Hargrove that first morning. Let it go. She hadn't needed us to stand up for her. She'd been standing on her own the whole time. All we did, finally, was let her see that we knew it. I've been home 6 weeks now. My hip is better. Some mornings I still think about that ward, about Ruiz getting to his feet on bad knees, about every hand in that room going up. A man doesn't get many moments like that. I'm glad I didn't miss this one.